My turn.
You remember the Terminator, don't you? The 1984 science fiction film that shocked the world when it grossed over 78 million USD worldwide, despite having a production budget of only 6.4 million USD. It is the story of a ruthless killing machine, traveling through time to hunt down a woman carrying the seed of life that could decide the fate of humanity. More than 3 decades later, this film still retains its burning appeal, not only because of its breathtakingly tense storyline, but also because of the dramatic behind-the-scenes secrets that have never been fully revealed. A stuntman was forced to hurl himself naked from a height of 7 meters straight onto cold concrete. Or a glamorous character that seemed harmless, but whoever played this role ended up haunted by a deadly curse. There was even a scene so dangerous that the entire crew had to flee, leaving James Cameron himself to step in and perform it. But all of that was only the prelude. Because behind the Terminator lie even more shocking truths, and you will hardly believe what was really hidden in the making of this film. 1. The leading actress escaped the Terminator on broken legs. On the very first day preparing to embody Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton received a devastating blow. Her ankle had been broken in what seemed like a minor accident. But in the script, Sarah was a woman who had to run endlessly to survive against a soulless killing machine. Quitting meant the entire film would collapse, while continuing meant throwing herself into unbearable pain. The crew had no choice but to push all chase sequences to the very end of the schedule, hoping Linda would heal in time. Yet when the filming days arrived, the injury was still raw, her ankle still swollen. Hamilton was left with only one option: wrap it tight, suppress the agony, and hurl herself into every single run. Each pounding footstep of Sarah Connor on screen was the real scream of pain from Linda's body. Audiences saw a Sarah Connor defying destiny with fierce resilience, but the crew knew the truth. Linda Hamilton was running for her life on her shattered ankle. That sacrifice gave birth to an immortal role, turning Sarah Connor into a worldwide icon. But then, while the cameras were still rolling, a horrifying incident struck the set, freezing everyone in shock. 2. The Born from Lightning scene. A stuntman hurled himself naked from 7 meters onto concrete. Do you remember the moment when Kyle Reese arrived from the future, crashing onto the ground in a flash of lightning, completely naked? Behind those few fleeting seconds was a stunt that left the entire crew frozen in fear. The stuntman was asked to stand on a platform nearly 7 meters high, with no harness, no airbag, only rough concrete below, covered by a few fragile wooden boards. When James Cameron shouted, "Action!" and the entire set held its breath. The man threw himself down without a scream, only the whistle of wind in his ears, then crash, a shock that made the whole studio tremble. For a split second, everyone believed he would never get back up. Yet the stuntman staggered to his feet, clutching his aching body, trembling in shock, while the crew stood speechless. Michael Biehn, who played Reese, later admitted, "This was the craziest jump I have ever witnessed in my life." If that jump made everyone hold their breath, another accident nearly forced Arnold Schwarzenegger himself to quit acting forever. 3. Arnold nearly lost 3 fingers because of a killer shotgun. In Terminator 2, the scene of the T-800 spinning a shotgun one-handed to reload became one of the coolest images ever to appear on screen. But behind that iconic moment was an accident that almost destroyed the actor himself. To make Arnold's spin smooth, the crew had designed a custom shotgun with an enlarged trigger. Yet one day on set, Arnold accidentally picked up a real shotgun instead. By reflex, he lifted it and gave it a spin. Instantly, the force bore down, making 3 of his fingers scream in pain, as if they were about to snap. Doctors rushed to check and warned him, if Arnold had twisted just a little harder, 3 of his fingers would have been crushed to pieces. But don't look away, because hidden behind the Terminator lurks a deadly curse that chills anyone who dares to hear about it. 4. The Curse of John Connor, a savior's role that turned real life into tragedy. In the world of Terminator, John Connor is the chosen one, the child inside Sarah Connor, who would later become the leader of the Resistance, the only man capable of guiding humanity against Skynet. He is the beacon of hope, the reason the past is hunted and the future reshaped. Yet in real life, anyone who took on this role of destiny seemed to be dragged into an endless spiral of tragedy. Edward Furlong, the rebellious teenager in T2, became a star overnight. But the spotlight was too blinding, crushing his youth. Furlong quickly fell into drugs and alcohol, was arrested multiple times, lost every major role, and saw his golden opportunities vanish. Nick Stoltz, who inherited the role of John Connor in T3, disappeared from Hollywood. When the public wondered where he had gone, the press exposed the chilling truth. Stahl was found wandering in Skid Row, the most infamous slum of Los Angeles, filled with addicts and despair. Christian Bale, the A-list actor who played John Connor in Salvation, seemed poised to break the curse, but he too was consumed by destructive rage. A leaked clip of Bale furiously cursing at the crew on set exploded online, becoming one of the internet's most infamous scandals at the time, casting a shadow over the entire film. Jason Clarke, John Connor in Genesis, faced yet another downfall. No drugs, no scandal, but still a tragedy. The film was a complete box office disaster, and his career spiraled downward with it. 4 fates, 4 different paths, yet all ended in ruin. A role written to save the world on screen instead turned into a curse that destroyed lives. And behind those wounds lay even more horrifying pain, beginning with brutal blows that struck beyond the camera. 5. Struck for real with an iron pipe, fingers left paralyzed on set. Can you believe that in The Terminator there was a scene where someone was genuinely injured with no special effects to cover it up? It sounds unbelievable, but it actually happened. In the scene where Kyle Reese furiously smashes an iron pipe at the Terminator, the audience only sees staged violence on screen. But behind the scenes it was far more brutal. Tom Woodruff Jr., the effects artist, had to put his real hand out for Arnold to strike. No fake prop, no foam substitute, just bare flesh and a crushing blow from the killing machine. The result? His fingers were smashed, numbed, and lost all sensation for weeks. James Cameron even trolled him by sending a Christmas card that read, "Hope your fingers feel again soon." And that was only considered a minor accident. Because right after that, the crew faced a scene so terrifying that everyone fled the set. 6. James Cameron risked death for the deadly helicopter scene. In T2, there is one sequence that makes anyone watching hold their breath. A helicopter diving just above the ground, sliding under an overpass, skimming past vehicles and people. It is considered one of the most dangerous shots in film history, because if the pilot had miscalculated by even a few meters, the entire set could have turned into a catastrophe. The professional cameramen all shook their heads, refusing to stand behind the lens. They said, "No, this scene is insane, it's not worth risking lives." But James Cameron thought otherwise. He coldly stepped forward, grabbed the camera and declared, "Give it here, I'll do it myself." And it was Cameron, not any cameraman, who held the camera as the helicopter roared past right above his head. Had there been the slightest error that day, audiences would never have seen T2 on screen. They would only have read the news about a director killed under spinning blades. And the most frightening part, this was not the only time Cameron risked his life to protect his cinematic dream. 7. "I'll be back," the legendary line that almost never existed. On the day of filming the police station scene, Arnold Schwarzenegger hesitated over his iconic line. He argued that "I will be back" sounded more fitting for a machine and was also easier to pronounce. Cameron, however, insisted on keeping "I'll be back," believing that its brevity and punch carried far greater force. The two argued heatedly, but in the end, Cameron prevailed. That day's take gave birth to one of the most legendary lines in film history. 8. James Cameron, from mouldy Big Macs to the $1 script that changed his life. Few would believe that the most powerful director in Hollywood today once endured such misery. After being fired from Piranha 2, Cameron hit rock bottom. His car was repossessed, he couldn't pay rent, and he survived only on Big Mac coupons his mother mailed him. He ate one and saved the other for the next day, even when it had turned soggy and mouldy from being left too long. In that despair, Cameron still clung to his dream. He painstakingly drew the entire storyboard of the Terminator, every frame, every detail, with a blind conviction that this story would save his life. And then, like a fateful gamble, Cameron sold the script to Gail Ann Hurd for just $1. But there was one condition: he had to direct it himself. From a man surviving on spoiled food, Cameron rose to become Hollywood royalty. Adding more drama, he even married Gail Ann Hurd, the producer who had bought his script, before divorcing her years later, another layer of tragedy behind the triumph. But did you know the Terminator was once dragged into court over accusations of plagiarism? 9. James Cameron accused of plagiarism and lost bitterly. When the Terminator exploded and became a global phenomenon, not everyone was celebrating. Science fiction writer Harlan Ellison suddenly declared that the film had stolen its idea from an episode of The Outer Limits he had written. Instead of engaging in a long legal war, the studio chose to settle, paying compensation and adding Ellison's name to the end credits. James Cameron was furious, calling Ellison a parasite and snapping, "He can kiss my ass." It became a stain that Cameron despised so much he avoided mentioning it for the rest of his career. And ironically, while Hollywood was busy fighting over plagiarism, the very central character of the film terrified the entire world with nothing more than a few dozen words. 10. Arnold spoke only 58 words, enough to haunt the world. In The Terminator, 1984, did you know Arnold Schwarzenegger had only 58 words of dialogue? Cameron deliberately trimmed it down, turning the T-800 into a true machine. Few words, no soul, and ice-cold detachment. Without long speeches, with only short lines like, "I'll be back," or "Come with me if you want to live," Arnold carved the image of a destroyer that needed no conversation. Mere presence was enough to instill dread. The less a character speaks, the more terrifying he becomes. And that silence immortalized the Terminator as a cinematic icon. But the truth is, the crew didn't always choose the safe way. There was a moment when they were willing to risk it all, even unintentionally teaching audiences a criminal skill. 11. The leading actress actually learned real lockpicking. In T2, the scene where Sarah Connor escapes the mental hospital by unlocking her cell door looks like just another staged trick. But Linda Hamilton refused to fake it. She insisted on learning real lockpicking so that every trembling movement of her hands on screen would be the genuine skill she had just acquired in real life. In front of the camera, Hamilton twisted the picks and the lock snapped open. No props, no cinematic trickery. Sarah Connor truly escaped using her newly learned lockpicking skill. In the UK, this scene was nearly cut because censors feared audiences might copy it. And when it comes to insane casting choices, you won't believe who was once almost chosen to wear the skin of the killing machine. 12. O.J. Simpson almost became the Terminator. It may sound like a joke, but it's true. Before Arnold was cemented as the T-800, the studio considered one surprising name: O.J. Simpson. The reason for rejection was painfully ironic. James Cameron thought Simpson looked too gentle to convince audiences he could play a cold-blooded killer, and so the role slipped away from O.J. But fate played a crueler hand. Only a few years later, the world was stunned when O.J. Simpson was accused of real-life murder. In 1994, His ex-wife Nicole Brown and her friend Ronald Goldman were brutally killed, and Simpson became the prime suspect, leading to a sensational trial America would forever remember as the trial of the century. And still, the shocking truths behind this film did not stop there. 13. Arnold appeared on screen for only 16 minutes. The Terminator, 1984, runs nearly 2 hours, yet few realise that Arnold Schwarzenegger, the soul of the film, appeared on screen for only 16 minutes. James Cameron deliberately crafted the T-800 as a shadow of death, appearing rarely, but every emergence left viewers frozen in fear. This strategy made audiences feel as though the Terminator lurked everywhere, haunting the film from start to finish, even though his screen time equaled that of a supporting role. And while Arnold embodied the nightmare in flesh, the image no less terrifying was the metallic skeleton hidden beneath the skin. An icon conceived under the most unlikely circumstances. 14. The legendary endoskeleton was built in a hotel room. At that time, James Cameron and Stan Winston were not yet Hollywood giants. They had no advanced workshops, no budget for a grand design team. All they possessed was a cramped hotel room, a rickety wooden table, and a few crumpled napkins. In that modest space, Cameron passionately described the nightmare he had seen. A skeletal machine rising from fire, its eyes glowing red and soulless. Stan Winston quietly sketched the first lines on the napkin. Piece by piece, joints, cables, and steel teeth began to emerge. Without premium materials, they scavenged plastic, scrap metal, and began crafting by hand right on the hotel carpet. Night after night, amid the scratch of pencils and the clatter of makeshift parts, the first form of the T-800 endoskeleton took shape. And if the body of the Terminator was born out of such makeshift work, then its chilling sound was likewise conceived inside a dusty garage. 15. Brad Fiedel composed the score with It's a Broken Keyboard. The iconic thump 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 sound of the Terminator was not created in a luxurious studio, but inside a dusty garage. Brad Fiedel, the film's composer, sat before an outdated synthesizer that kept malfunctioning, producing offbeat rhythms. When Fiedel tested it, the pounding, distorted sound came out, like the crooked heartbeat of a soulless machine. James Cameron immediately jumped up and shouted, "Perfect! That's the distorted heart of the Terminator!" From a technical glitch that seemed worthless, the film gained one of the most haunting and unique soundtracks in cinema history. But not every idea of Cameron's survived. At times, he had to cut even the most emotional scenes simply out of fear that the audience couldn't handle it. 16. Kyle Reese almost had a breakdown crying scene. In the original cut of The Terminator, Michael Biehn, who played Kyle Reese, once delivered a heartbreaking scene. Reese was no longer a hardened soldier, but collapsed, trembling, and crying as memories of the machine apocalypse overwhelmed him. The camera captured every detail: weary eyes, broken breaths, a voice trembling with fear. It was not just a flashback, but one of the rare glimpses into the shattered soul of a surviving soldier. Yet when Cameron sat in the editing room, he hesitated. He feared audiences would not accept Reese's weakness, worried the film's pacing would falter. And so the scene vanished, erased from cinema history, remembered only by those present on set. And did you know, the legendary jacket worn by Reese was originally nothing more than a worthless throwaway item. 17. The legendary coat cost $1. The image of Kyle Reese wearing a faded, worn-out trench coat is forever etched in the minds of viewers, embodying the rugged, weary look of a soldier from the future. Yet few realise that this costume was neither meticulously designed nor worth thousands of dollars. It was found in a roadside thrift store, hanging among piles of discarded clothing. The price? Just $1. A seemingly worthless item became an immortal piece of cinema history, to the point where fans today are willing to pay hundreds for a replica. And just like that $1 coat, There were early ideas so naive they are almost unbelievable, ones that nearly changed the entire shape of the film. 18. The studio once wanted Reese to have a robot dog. When James Cameron submitted the Terminator script to studios, a slew of bizarre, creative suggestions came back. One in particular infuriated him. Reese could not return from the future alone. He had to bring along a cyborg dog. The idea sounded cute, almost like something out of a children's film where the loyal dog helps its master. But Cameron knew better. The Terminator was not a warm story, but a cold nightmare about humanity's annihilation. He dismissed it outright, declaring that if a robot dog was forced into the story, the entire atmosphere would collapse and the film would become a joke. Thanks to his defiance, audiences got the chilling, uncompromising film that defined genre. And when the film was finally made, Cameron used every resource he could, even casting the real-life sister of the leading actress. 19. Linda Hamilton had a twin sister as her double. It sounds unbelievable, but in T2, audiences were truly fooled by the mirror scene with Sarah Connor, or when the T-1000 transformed into her copy. In 1991, visual effects technology was not advanced enough to make such scenes look so real, so most assumed Cameron had used complicated cinematic tricks. But the truth was much simpler. Linda Hamilton had a twin sister named Leslie Hamilton. The scenes showing two Sarah Connors at once were simply played by both sisters. When the T-1000 transformed into the fake version, one sister played the real Sarah while the other portrayed the copy. No CGI, no machines, just two people so alike that viewers never suspected a thing. 20. In Poland, the Terminator was renamed the Electronic Murderer. When the Terminator premiered in Poland, a comical problem immediately arose. In Polish, the word Terminator actually means apprentice or trainee. Imagine buying a ticket and seeing the title The Apprentice. What could be more ridiculous? To avoid disastrous confusion, the distributor hastily changed the title to The Electronic Murderer, a name that sounded both cheap and absurd, making cinema's coldest killing machine seem more like a faulty electronic gadget on clearance sale. Yet, despite that bizarre title, the Terminator still swept through Polish theatres, gripping audiences in its nightmare of steel, just as it did everywhere else in the world. The Terminator is not just an action sci-fi film, but a cinematic monument where every detail, every frame is soaked in sweat, blood, and breathless behind-the-scenes stories. More than 4 decades later, it still holds its power, both terrifying audiences and proving the mad genius of James Cameron. That is why The Terminator remains firmly on the list of films that must be seen at least once in a lifetime. If you found this series of dramatic facts fascinating, don't forget to hit like, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more shocking behind-the-scenes stories from the world of cinema. Believe me, what you've just read is only the tip of the iceberg.